Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of James v James.
Hello.
We're back. We took a week off, but we're back.
Yeah, well, a couple of days. But,
But we're back and we're going to be talking a bit about the man, the myth, the legend, Trump, the Trumpy.
The Trumpinator.
He had his first anniversary, so that was one thing. But roughly around that point, there was this photo taken that I love, this of his motorcade going by, and a lovely woman flipping him the bird, flipping him the good old FU. And some people got angry about it, some people liked it. And she lost her job. So, James, do you want to tell the story of how we came to debating this?
Well, you posted it on your Facebook feed, and I had to troll it. Mm-hmm. And it became like a thread that I don't think anyone else has really watched. Eventually, we were like, okay, let's chat about this properly.
Yeah, I kind of baited the fuck out of it. I called her a hero, so I figured you were
putting the worm on the line.
I was waiting with my fishing stick, just like any moment now he's gonna come.
I was getting a bit annoyed. I thought, okay, look, I've got to go into this, but eventually after the 20th comment, I was just like, okay, let's.
Yeah. No, we were getting into me saying your position is you're basically a fascist. How dare you?
Yeah, and I was saying ridiculous. Let's talk about this properly.
Sure. So as we do on this show, we'll be very civil and friendly for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just getting into this story. So yeah, this woman, sequence of events. This woman's on a bike. She didn't pose for this photo. She's, from what I gather, on her way to work or just biking somewhere. She flips off Trump because the motorcade just goes by, and some lucky as fuck photographer gets a photo of her doing this 2-second moment. I don't know how that happened, but
yeah, that's a bit fishy to me. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, sure. But then it gets posted. It becomes a bit of a meme, and then she loses her job. Obviously, that became the news story then, and that's where obviously I came into it just of saying this is kind of bullshit. This woman shouldn't lose her job for that. What the fuck? And so. Yeah, do you want to summarise your position on it?
Well, I mean, when the story first broke, everyone was saying, okay, a lady cycled up to Donald Trump's car and flipped him off. That wasn't entirely accurate. Uh-huh. As you just said there, the car was going past with his entourage, and she, okay, well, this is my opportunity, flipped him off. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it does seem a bit dodgy that they can get it right there at the right time, but... it kind of verges into the conspiracy theory kind of stuff, and I don't really follow that stuff. So I kind of think, okay, it was kind of set up in a way that she seemed more aggressive than she really was. But nonetheless, I mean, the act in itself, I mean, you're calling it a form of protest.
Yeah, because it is. I mean,
I call it a form of childishness, really.
Protest is allowed to be childish. If we start putting weird limits on saying, okay, that was protest, but it was childish, you're not allowed that. It's
well, it's not. For me, there's the law and there's social conduct. Mm-hmm. They're two separate things to me. So yeah, okay. So freedom of expression, freedom of speech. As long as you're not inciting violence, it's whatever is permissible in any form. Okay, but it doesn't mean it's a good way to behave, right? And it doesn't mean as a company I have to associate myself with an employee who behaves in such a babyish manner in public. And if you look more into this company, there's more to what meets kind of the eye. Mm-hmm. There was a story about a male co-worker who talked on social media,
right,
and called someone a libtard arsehole, right? Mm-hmm. And he wasn't fired, okay? But they talked to him and disciplined him, okay? But there's no evidence of this. This is what the woman is saying, the lady is saying. I believe it's Julie Briskman. Name?
Sounds right, yeah.
But yeah, so we have no evidence of that, and we don't really know whether that's true. Mm-hmm. But she's saying, okay, well, they let this guy stay on, why couldn't they let me stay on? Which is a good point. But calling someone a libtard arsehole on Facebook, whether or not it's true or not, whether he did do that, is not the same as swearing at the president right in his face. I think there is legitimate forms of protest in a socially graceful kind of way. And I think if you're running a company, I don't think you should have to associate yourself with people who behave like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, for one thing, the photo is like I said, from afar, it's behind her. The knowledge of it being her is like I said, it's not a moment she posed for. It's not like she got the photographers like, oh, show me flipping off the president. I want to big this up. This was just a photo that got big without her permission even necessarily. So it's.
I don't want to interrupt, but
Yeah,
just stop
sure.
there. That is interrupting, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, go for it.
She shared the photo.
Okay.
So she shared the photo around. Someone sent it to her. So she did. Genuinely put it out there, and if you look at her character, you see that she was in the Women's March against Trump. A big liberal.
So I'm just saying that like the photo being taken itself wasn't necessarily something that this wasn't a process she went in for.
We don't know.
The only action that she started herself that we can definitely confirm was the flipping off the president. Sharing it, yeah, sure. That's. So it then bigs it up a little bit more, and then she is sort of complicit in the photo and saying it was her. But the photo itself of not showing her face, it wouldn't have necessarily been known that it was her. But even once she shared it and copped to it, yeah, it is just literally just showing off a single moment, this flare up of anger, and considering Trump's brand, if you will, he's a very incendiary person who kind of elicits that sort of gut reaction just in the moment that it's not surprising. Like, this isn't here's an example of something that's sort of similar recently. There was this tape of a woman who she was an assistant DA, I forget where, I think it was in Detroit. She was in an Uber, got completely plastered, and just starts yelling at the guy driving the car. And he starts recording the audio recently. So like she's calling him an idiot, saying, and like he eventually just pulls over and says, "I'm calling the police," and they just wait for the police to come. And the whole time she's saying, "Oh, I'm an assistant DA. I'll get you fired." And she's throwing.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up, right? And of course, because this is recorded and this guy clearly demonstrates this, none of this was his fault. She gets fired, right? Now that's totally fine because that's like a prolonged. Recorded, like she had many places where she could have stopped. She abused her power and like even brought her job into the thing. So yeah, even though that was outside of office hours and she wasn't necessarily representing the office in that moment, that in itself, yeah, totally fine for her to be fired. This, on the other hand, is a woman on her own time, not representing the office she comes from, in a brief single moment, in a gut reaction against a public figure who everyone knows and has a very distinct reaction to. So, like, morally speaking, like, can we really blame her for this 2-second, like, in transit, like, thing of flipping off someone that she doesn't like,
Yeah, because if you look at her behaviour afterwards, I mean, she made it a profile picture on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I would too.
I know you would.
Yeah.
And I would troll you heavily. But,
sure, but yeah.
But I mean, it's not as if it was like, oh shit, I flipped with the president. It was, hey everyone, look at this, look how great this is. Okay, if you want to protest, get a sign, stand there and protest the issues that you have problems with, right? Or the policies you have an issue with. Sorry, going right up to the president's face and put your middle finger up at him. It gets to a point where you think, okay, how far does civil society need to go? And if this happened to Obama. I doubt you'd be saying the same thing, but I would still be saying the same thing. I think if Obama drove past and you put your middle finger up, that's not cool either. Like it's not a political issue for me. This is a social issue for me, really. I think it gets to the point where it becomes so childish and so babyish, and the political divides become so tribal that actually it's not because you're speaking truth to power. It's just an expression of the dislike of Donald Trump. And you don't have to like him, you don't have to respect him or agree with his policies. But there's a certain element of integrity in civil society where you can disagree with someone, but that doesn't mean they have to be subject to, I think abuse is a strong word, but subject to that kind of aggressive form of protest. I don't really think that's cool. Going
back to what you said there about Obama, I don't like the implication that you think I'd be just a massive hypocrite about this if this happened to Obama. Because it happened to Obama daily. Like, I mean, the Tea Party protests weren't exactly they weren't the most civil people. Like, they had like the N-word on signs occasionally. They were saying "Go back to Africa."
Yeah, they were bastards as well.
No,
yeah.
I know, but like, I didn't say those people should lose their jobs. You know, and I would consider that a far more egregious and harassing protest. But like, flipping someone off, I think this is just a different judgment in the value of flipping someone off. I see it as very, very minimal. Like, as a gut reaction to someone who is an incendiary political figure, it's just a sort of like, yeah, no, that's how you would react to someone who's I would say is a dangerous person who's, you know, caused a lot of problems for America. Yeah, no, it's a gut reaction. Like I said, Tea Party processes were way more incendiary and like prolonged in there, just like, I'm gonna put the N-word on a sign and like tell him to go back to a country he's not from. You know, that's way worse. And even then, I wouldn't say those people don't deserve to lose their jobs. You know, maybe for hate speech, but that's a separate issue. That's not about Obama. That's, you know,
I would say they should.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went up to protest Obama, said I don't like Obama, end, I don't know, abortion rights or something, you know. That's different to saying go back to Africa. If my employee turned up with a sign, a picture of him, go back to Africa, made it his profile picture, he'd be out the door faster than, you know. I kick him out, definitely. I mean, for me, that's very simple. If you're going to cross the civil boundaries, then yeah, get out of my business. And I think whether it's Obama, Trump, Bush, it doesn't matter. There are certain limits to, in a socially acceptable way, that I think we should take. I think in terms of Obama, you're saying that Trump is an incendiary figure. Yeah, for the left. For the right, he's fixing problems in America, not creating them. But the right believe that Obama was creating problems, and Obama was an incendiary figure for the right. And so, like, again, you're putting your value judgments as objective judgments of what's going on, and that is the problem. When I say, you know, you don't appreciate me saying, okay, well, if it was Obama, you wouldn't be saying this, calling you a hypocrite. I'm kind of painting this generally as a picture of a lot of people on the left, and not necessarily yourself. But it just seems to me that there is like this hypocritical thing of because it's Trump, it's okay, which is practically what you've just said.
No, like I said, it's not because it's Trump. Like I said, it would be okay under Obama. You know, if you don't like the president, flipping him off, yeah, that's not, like I said, I consider that a form of protest. I consider it, you know, a bit much, you know, or not even a bit much, but just you know, you could do better. Yeah, just you could be a bit more specific. Yeah, with the signs, you could be a bit more clever. But if people are gonna have that gut reaction when he drives past, I mean, like you said, it was to his face. Like he probably didn't even know this happened until the photo was out there. Also, when I say incendiary figure, I don't just mean, oh, he has politics I disagree with. Everyone has politics, you know, people disagree with. Obama was a very calm, relaxed figure about stuff. He'd make a casual joke, but he wouldn't like attack people's very existence and integrity.
He drone strikes people without judiciary or trial. I mean, that is pretty...
Yeah, no,
I mean, that's worse
like I said, that's
talking about Mexicans.
Like I said, that's a policy thing of just
for Trump is policy though.
No, I know, but come on, let's not pretend that Trump is a normal politician. This is a man who has literally flipped off people at his rallies, who has called for literal violence at his rallies, who has said literally to send all Mexicans back, that they are rapists. Like,
I'm not defending how Trump's behaved.
That's what I say by incendiary. That's what I mean by, like, this is a man who is aberrant, who is completely, like, beyond what is.
I'm not saying Donald Trump has social grace, but just because the presidents have social grace doesn't mean that everyone else has to break down their social values too. We can still have a civil society and be respectful to each other, even if the person in power isn't. You know, once we start behaving like him, that's when the whole fucking thing collapses.
Yeah, no, it's
collapses. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's not the best way. Like I said, you know, obviously I'd prefer it to be a bit more civilized. But even so, it's, you know, if someone is going to flip off the president, I don't think, like, the key part of it for me is just the fact that it was a gut reaction more than anything else. That it was this moment of, whoop, flip out president, hate that guy, flip him off. And then photo gets taken, and then from that spiraling events of just like, okay, now I've lost my job. You know, it's a bit, it's a weird extreme that I don't think we should be encouraging of that, you know.
So no, I buy that point that it was a gut reaction, and she probably wasn't thinking too much at the time. But when she shared it on social media and made it a profile photo, she was sharing. So it's not as if she, as I said before, turned her back on the way she behaved. She actively encouraged it, and actively shared it. I think that in terms of the way that this is being framed is kind of like you have to respect authority to no limits. And this is the issue that I'm finding. If people are saying, we should speak truth to power, it's like, yeah, but again, like swearing at someone through a car, I just don't think that's the right way to do it.
This cuts to the other thing of what we were going to talk about here, because this idea of authority requiring respect. I think the moment that authority demands respect, it's no longer earned. If it's mandated, then by definition you can't earn it. Like, the moment like you have to stand for the flag, then the gesture itself becomes meaningless. That sort of thing. And this idea that Trump can't handle being flipped off, or that he's above being flipped off, he is a public servant at the end of the day, and if he's doing his job poorly to where people are angry at him, that they're due their right to get angry at him.
Legally and lawfully, yes. I'm not saying that it should be illegal to flip him off. I don't think... Well, actually, Trump hasn't even commented on this, so, I mean, we don't really... He probably doesn't give a shit. But,
he's probably... But, I mean, he's way too busy with equally petty shit.
I mean, when he called Kim Jong-un fat and short...
Oh, no. It's my favourite technique of his. It's like, look, he's calling me old. I would never call him fat and short. It's like
ridiculous.
I also love that in that tweet. It was like Kim Jong Un calls me what was it, old and insane. Like, I'm not old. It's like, wait, what old? What's the other bit?
Oldest president ever. Yeah. You're right. I do want to comment on that.
Sure.
But I think that's going to lead us into the long...
Yeah, sure.
If you could go back to this particular instance too. Again, I want to double down. If someone turned up to an Obama rally, one of my employees saying go back to Africa, get out of my business, okay?
Well, like I said, that's demeaning, literally. Right. Like, it's racist.
Okay, even if you said fuck you, Obama, again, that's like, dude, I mean, have some grace. But I think another thing I want to point out is that this company wasn't an ordinary company. It was a government contractor.
Yeah.
And they're also a pro-Trump contractor. Okay, so that goes into other kind of issues of like, hand-in-hand business and government hand-in-hand stuff. But ultimately, the company had a policy, had a social media policy. They obviously have an ideology. And obviously, it wasn't good for any government contractor to have their employees doing that to the President of America. So, I mean, you can kind of see where they were coming from, just a little bit.
Well,
right?
I mean, I would almost argue the opposite, that the optics of that then becomes immediately that they're firing someone perhaps on a political basis, that this was a pro-Trump company, and they're suddenly... that they're doing it because they don't want to lose their contract. It's becomes more of a business, almost a corruption issue at that point, where they'll protect the president from stuff that they maybe shouldn't be dabbling in that, as a business side of it. But now they're doing it as a political move, basically.
You could frame it that way, and I think that's a good point. But I think it's more of a business move. I think they don't want to piss off the person who's going to keep on their government contracts, and she is behaving detrimental to the business. So, on your definition, actually, she was putting the business in danger.
That's a reasonable point. Yeah, no, I don't think that. I would think that if then Trump or whoever was working for him did cancel a contract with them because of her doing that, I think that would then very much stretch into some massive government overreach at that point, and then we'd have a bigger scandal on it.
That's a legal case,
to add on to the fucking other like this whole thing with Puerto Rico, the company that was meant to be doing the refurbishing all of the power grid and stuff, like that was a company connected to Trump that was like set up like a couple of weeks or something before the hurricane, or like after the hurricane. It would be on that sort of side a bit of like, wait, what kind of profiteering is going on here with this government? It's pretty ridiculous. But another issue I wanted to talk about on this side of it is because this is the stuff that we didn't actually end up getting into in our Facebook conversation of it. Would you ever defend James Dormer, the Google employee who was fired for that manifesto he made of how diversity was ruining Google or something?
I think people like that James, what was her face, the Google guy. Let's not forget this guy had a level of autism. The guy wasn't like totally. Yeah. I mean, he had like certain issues. So for him, like the whole kind of social conventions didn't really occur to him. So I think it's quite an exceptional case.
I
I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you would have done it.
Okay, like, ignoring the autism side of it, because, like, I mean, I've seen him in interviews, he seems fairly socially conscious. He's not completely, like, outside of social norms. He knew what he was doing.
He's not quite.
No, he's not low functioning, is my point. So, like, and, ignoring that just on principle, like, what would you...
I'm not for affirmative action or quotas for diversity. So
no, I know, but, like, the point is that it's a similar sort of thing of him making this big public spectacle of releasing this dossier that had some very inflammatory, like, language in it of just, like, so just suggesting almost that women weren't as capable in these jobs, and, like, that became this huge news story. So would you then defend him being fired?
Google has a right to fire him, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wouldn't have fired him if I was Google. But it's up to them to, they have a company image they want to keep, okay? For them, it was all about diversity and kind of pandering to the left. We know this of Google and Facebook. That's not bullshit.
Yeah.
So
no,
for them, they wanted to keep up that. Okay.
It's just an interesting point that you say that you wouldn't fire him, even though by your own standard you said that you would fire this. No, that you'd fire that you'd fire that woman for doing something incendiary and crazy, like, online sharing this thing, being political, but you wouldn't fire James Dormer for doing essentially the same thing. Just because his politics basically align with yours.
If I was Google, I would have fired him because I'd be left-wing orientated and I would have been promoting all this kind of stuff. But I mean, as a right-wing guy, as James Bryan, no, I wouldn't have fired him.
Yeah, but there you're admitting basically a political bias. You're saying that you're basing these things on, that I agree with that guy, so I don't care that he made this massive inflammatory dossier that's going to create a political image for our company. Of course, it aligns with yours, but the fact is, you said that the problem was the fact that it was incendiary and it had these, like, the flipping off whatever president was a gesture that was a gesture too far, and that's one moment. Like, this whole manifesto thing was very clearly, like, thought out and then posted to a lot of people. It would never happened without his own actions. It was very clearly like this massive thing that you would have to fire him if you were to keep consistent with what you were saying there.
No, because I don't think that what he did was totally completely lacking social grace. I don't think the guy had some sort of issues with the way he's socialising people anyway. But I don't think that's the same as going up to someone flipping them off. He was making a point, he had a lot of data to back it up, and he had a theory, and he put it out there. As Google, they should have the right to fire him if they believe that it really conflicted with their company image and was detrimental to the company's interests, which they would argue was. And he would have known that as well. And so the problem is that these people are behaving in a way that's detrimental to their company. And that, for me, kind of sums it up.
What I was trying to get at there was that even if his politics, I mean, if his politics aligned with the company, then he wouldn't have to do it. Like, he could have brought that up internally, like, without sending this out to 20 people. Like, he could have made it. He could have made that manifesto and basically just, like, submitted it to his boss, and that would have, like, he made it an event. He made it the spectacle that was the problem that you were saying. Like, just in general, if you're going to be non-biased, no matter what the politics of it is, even if it totally agrees with you, the fact that you made this spectacle and some of it was literally saying that women, like, just weren't as suited to this field, like, that's something that could discourage women in that sort of sense. If they're thinking, like, that this guy, like, that they'd be working with fundamentally believes that they aren't as capable as him, like, just from a baseline.
Yeah, but again, like, you're trying to bring the whole diversity thing into it. For me, if you want to build a company, you want just the best people in, and that's the hallmark of a company. I don't think it's about encouraging the right people. What? I just want the person to do the job the best. Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
It's called building a profitable company.
Right.
So I think I see your point there, and I think it's a good point. But I do think ultimately, if you're doing something to deliberately harm your company's interests, then yeah, I think Google were within the rights to give them the boot.
Right. Well, I mean, moving on to other aspects of it, because this is an issue that keeps coming up, mainly in America. We're a bit more chill about it here than America, because we don't have to fucking salute a flag every day when we're children, which I still think is weird in America. But this whole issue that's ongoing with the NFL and everything of players and people not standing for the flag and not standing for the national anthem. For some reason, America makes a big deal out of this. What's your opinion on it? Because I haven't actually got what you think of it.
I mean, I want more of that kind of stuff over here. I think we lack a national consciousness in many ways. Although, to be fair, I think in Britain, the national consciousness is not giving a shit. You know,
Yeah, basically.
The British way of thinking is to be unpatriotic is almost to be patriotic in Britain.
Yeah, no,
You know?
well, it's tall poppy syndrome. Basically, it's just, if you get too high, then we gotta cut you down. Like that's
Yeah,
there's
right. Exactly.
you're not allowed to get too big for your britches here.
Yeah, and that's, in many ways, that's the good thing about British culture. But in some ways, it does kind of limit individuality and kind of push people down.
I think it's kind of psycho over there. It's weird and creepy, and I get weird this is obviously an exaggeration, but North Korea vibes of just like, and now stand for the flag and our national anthem and remember all of how fucking great our country is. And it's just like, what is going on? Like,
Well, I think we've got to remember that America is the superpower of the age. And it's the super culture of the age.
I mean, sure, but
Britain was like that 100 years ago. The great powers of the age are great powers for a reason. It's because people believe in the mythology of their culture. So America,
I think you're coming at it a bit backwards. I think once they find themselves by circumstance of history in this great position, they then validate themselves by creating this mythology around themselves of, we're just that fucking good. That's why we're here.
No, I think you got it backwards. I think once a culture stops believing in itself, the culture starts to lose its nerve. And I think to anyone who isn't part of that superpower, they may look at it like we looked at the Soviet Union and go, "Whoa, that's crazy shit there." But for the Soviets, people believed in the Soviet Union as people believe in America, just in the same way that in Europe, actually, equality of opportunity is higher than the States. I mean, if you want to talk about the American dream, you might want to talk about the European dream.
Oh yeah,
but to stop them believing in the American dream is like pulling the rug under the carpet of America. And then the whole kind of purpose of the US disappears.
The problem with the American dream, at least in the economic sense, the idea of you can work hard and you can get there, statistically speaking, was never true, especially if you were anything other than white and, realistically speaking, male. So, like, if you weren't a white man, there was, like, statistically speaking, no odds of you getting the American dream, like, in the sense of getting rich and middle class and, like, off your own back and just being, and having a great life. Like it's always been mythology, and it was kind of instated to keep capitalism running, especially during the Cold War, because like we call this the nuclear family for a reason. This is an idea that was literally prevalent from 40s to about the 60s before people realized that it basically didn't actually work. I mean, we're getting into some deep cultural mythology stuff here, but
obviously we agree that the American dream didn't apply to a lot of minorities. And America is correcting itself, as we discussed, quite rightly so.
Yeah.
But the idea of the American dream is still important nonetheless. The idea that you are in a land where you can work hard, build a business, contribute to the economy, make the pie bigger, that is important to everything that America is and was. So I think it's mythology for a reason, because it's mythological. But once you stop believing in the mythology, even if it's not true, then your culture does start to kind of lose its zenith and lose its kind of
right.
Its passion for itself. Like in a way we have here, in a way a lot of Europe has.
Well,
so
this these are kind of separate things, but this idea of mythology and nationalism, the way I've heard it described, and I kind of like this term. A patriot loves their country because of what their country does. A nationalist loves their country in spite of what they do. So, like, a nationalist will disregard stuff like drone strikes and just say, no, our country is just great. And the problem I have with America is they're not patriotic, they're nationalistic. They'll disregard the horrific stuff that stands behind their history and just like say, no, America is fucking great, and like that's the end of the conversation. Like they'll disregard slavery and all this other stuff, and just like they won't implore the country to be better. They don't aspire to America being that world leader in moral sense. They're just like, no, we're just fucking big. And I
don't think that's true at all. I mean, I think the fact that Obama was voted in shows that America does care about progress. America does not have a racial obsession like it used to, and it's going out of that. I think the fact that half the country are Democrats show that that's not true, and a lot of Republicans who voted for Obama, and a lot of the Republicans who voted for, for example, people who voted for Bush, No Child Left Behind. It's not so black and white. I think you know.
Yeah, no, I'm
mind the
not. I'm
pun.
not saying America's like in a quagmire, but it's just the way that the people who consider themselves patriotic. I'm saying I'm talking more about the oeuvre of American patriotism that encompasses saluting the flag and singing the national anthem. Like, I mean, do most people even know the national anthem here, like verse for verse?
No, but
like
we're not,
it's just not mandated
but
here.
we're not like. So Britain's been around a lot longer than the US, obviously. We're kind of matured in a way as a culture, but also we're kind of going into old age, you know, and we haven't got that kind of youth and vigour that America has. And along with youth and vigour comes a little bit of naivety and maybe a little bit of immaturity. And that's something we can look at America and say, okay, maybe we were like this 100 years ago with our nationalism, as you call it, or patriotism, I call it. But you know what? America is at its zenith. America is the number one superpower of the world. And also, you forget how much America does in terms of financial aid, how much America does in terms of international relations. I mean, you can point out America's wars, but you can also talk about the Chinese and Japanese islands that America's got all its bases there. Stop them going forward. You got the Pakistan, India, America between that, North Korea. I mean, you could go on. If America just withdrew and became like us and didn't give a shit, the whole world would go up in flames.
Oh yeah, no. This is why I was very scared when Trump was saying that he wanted to just be isolationist and like, oh no, America, just you go sort it out for yourself. We're done. We're gonna go home. Like, I was a bit like, look, dude, you could definitely do with closing some military bases and stop fucking around with the Middle East. But yeah, his idea of just like, no, America's just for America now. We're going to step away from this. All this was very scary. I find it interesting that this idea that it's a weird mishmash because I don't understand it on the right. You especially with this, you're a libertarian. You strive for individual people, and yet you prop up this idea of the nation, of patriotism as this single unified figure far more than I do, even though I'm the one advocating a larger government. Like you advocate for this nation that doesn't really fit with the
it does totally fit.
I mean, you're talking about like a thing that naturally subsumes personal, I wouldn't say rights, but just like personality of like, no, you have to be in the, like you can't be against your nation's identity. You want this national identity, but you're also an individualist. It
makes total sense because the nation guarantees your individuality. If you haven't got a nation of laws which uphold your freedoms, and as a police force which looks after your freedoms, I would argue have a healthcare so you can live. It's got a military to protect you. Has got a national boundaries so you can form communities without it being too fluid. Without the nation, there is no individual. You need the nation for the individual. You need the community for the individual.
Interesting. I mean, that's the kind of argument I would use for protecting minority and social rights, because that's the argument I say when hate speech comes about. You need some degree of law or rule about it, because otherwise the rights of minorities will be trampled. And so, yeah, I agree with you on that part. I just disagree with the nation part of it being of taking. I've never understood this idea of taking pride in a nation, because the thing is, the nation isn't you. It's not necessarily even your family. It's this vague abstract thing, and just requiring it to be respected. I don't quite get it, especially like when you get to big areas like America. The identity is so broad. Like California and Mississippi are all they need is a different language, and you could call them different like corners of the earth in terms of how they act and like what their views on religion are. You really can't form an identity at that point.
You're not an American though. I mean, you live in a unitary system. Actually, to be fair, I think people still see themselves as British, English, Irish, Scottish within that kind of British umbrella, but I think with America, you're American first, and then you're a Floridian second.
For now, yeah. I mean, some people are starting to more be Texan or like
Texas is slightly different because it was an independent state originally, but still, the people who say I want an independent Texas, I mean, you're not a patriot. You know, you're turning your back against the country, which is really the governmental system that has kind of kept your unity as a country. I mean, without America, Texas would be invaded by the Mexicans.
Right, yeah.
100 years prior.
Yeah, can they give that back to Mexico and see what happens?
Well, I mean, it'll be like Mexico, won't it? But back to what we were saying.
Yeah.
The thing is, you need a strong but small state, in my opinion. But you need to believe in your country, in your nation, for it to work, for it to exist. The Soviet Union, one day everyone decided, you know what, this shouldn't exist. The Soviet Union shouldn't exist. It wasn't a war which brought it down. There were, of course, there's economic problems, but one day everyone just kind of over. You know, it was obviously it was going on for a while, but it got to a point where people just went, okay, this thing should not exist, and then it just broke down. And so America doesn't exist. It only exists in the heads of Americans. So once Americans decide that America isn't worth fighting for or being in or being part of, America will cease to exist. And you'll get the Balkanization. I think we're quite lucky with I think because we have the EU, Eastern Europe didn't balkanize in the same way that the Balkans did. But I mean, the potential for the US to balkanize is pretty. I think it's pretty high. I mean, it'd be pretty dangerous if the US federal government lost its control over the populace. I mean, the states would go to war with each other over petty things. You know, people think that just because we live in the 21st century and it's 2017, you can't have wars between states or militias anymore. You can. It can happen very quickly.
Oh, it can happen in America. I mean, they have as many guns as people. I wouldn't be surprised if some degree of civil war erupted there in the next 20 years, especially if Trump sticks around. But that's a thing for another day. Going back to our original point about the matter of authority, especially when it comes to the state and its leaders, this idea of, like I said, mandating respect for them. Because the thing is, we're born into the state, you know, and we don't really get to decide on that, you know, unless you immigrate or emigrate. But it's like, that's a small percentage of people. We were born into the era where the internet started getting big, and I've never really felt all that connected to this idea of Britain as a country. I don't want to sound too much of a dick about this, but I consider myself a citizen of the earth. Or it's like, I'm not that much of a cunt. Don't worry. But I like a lot of culture from different countries. You know, I like anime. I like me some. There's a lot of shows that I watch from different countries. I like a lot of American stuff because I grew up on American cartoons. So you know, it's this idea of British culture is very, and this idea of agreeing with British authority just because I was born here, or even just respecting the country when it's like the idea of respecting May right now, that is out of the question for me. She's just proven herself too completely incompetent to be worthy of respect.
No, I agree with you, but she's still our Prime Minister nonetheless, okay? And I don't think it would be good of you to go up and put your middle finger up at her face either. I mean, whether it's someone you or
the opportunity, if it presented itself.
It's not civil behaviour, James. You know? And the thing is, you can't really compare that. You know, I said earlier about the British thing being unpatriotic. It's patriotic in Britain. But it is because you're thinking as a British man who does think more internationally and doesn't really kind of see his state as that important in history, because you know what? We're not anymore. America still is. So you can't really compare the American mindset to ours, because they're as I said before, they're at the high stage of their culture now.
Isn't that makes right though? Like just saying like, oh well, they're the top dog, so they get to be complete pricks about it.
Not really,
because that's the problem I have with it, is that, you know, it breeds arrogance. That's the main problem that's the main problem with nationalism and patriotism. Is it implores you to think of yourself as, especially when this nationalistic thinking, it implores you to think imperialistically. It makes you think that you're always right. You know,
you call it imperialism.
Yeah.
Some people call it you know, you're not the world police. You know. Okay, but if there wasn't a Leviathan, if there wasn't, quote unquote, the great culture or the overpowering culture, right? Which is kind of responsible in a way America is. I know we've had things like freaking Vietnam and Afghanistan, Iraq, and things haven't been perfect. No policeman is perfect. But the vast majority of what America does in the world is positive, and it keeps the international system in order. Now, we're seeing the rise of China. I think China is going to be the next big culture.
Yeah, this is the thing.
We don't know if it's going to be a good thing or not. Okay, so China's going into Africa. You could argue it's colonizing in sort of like a mercantilist way, you know, state-funded capitalism. You could argue that China won't be as responsible as the US. You could argue that China will just go right into Japan when it can. You could argue that China will swallow up the rest of Asia. I think geographically it's actually in a location where it can't actually do that because of the way the mountains, it doesn't really set it up for a world domination point of view. And the Chinese have never really been into dominating other cultures. They've been very sort of insular in their history. I mean, through most of Chinese history, they only believe that China was the world. Anything outside it is not worth looking at. But say China wasn't like that, and say China was aggressive in a way that America isn't, and didn't really believe in human rights, and didn't really believe in the UN, then we'll see problems. And I think when you get a great culture like America, which, yes, has its drawbacks, but it keeps generally world peace, I think to then say, okay, well, you guys are arrogant. Yes, they are, for a reason.
This gets to a bit of a divide in my brain that might get viewed as hypocrisy depending on what thing I say, because it is something that I feel a bit hypocritical about. From a logical perspective, I don't want America to become isolationist, because I do think that because of the powers at play, it would structurally lead to massive problems. But on the moral side of it, I do view it as imperialism, and I do think that, especially like encouraging that from on the Americans' perspective, as like that they're moral police, and that they're top dog, and that they should just respect authority. Just in general, this idea of respecting authority that is just authority because it's gotten there is... This is where I've been reading into some anarchist literature, reading my Bakunin,
right.
And the idea of just like demanding the respect of authority that just happens to have found itself in power, that you didn't necessarily vote for, that you see as... in the case of Donald Trump, didn't even get a majority of the votes, like of the votes that were cast, and only got in because the system in America is fucked for how they pick a president.
The system is fucked in every country.
That
bar maybe Switzerland. Switzerland's pretty good.
No, it gets back to like our discussion of like how fucked you allow the system to be before you just call it and say, okay, look, this system needs overhaul if we're going to respect it, and respecting an authority that you were just born into it, like you didn't get a say in it, and you've realized this system is fucked, we need to change it, and then like this, you gotta, like, I know from the right it's a different perspective, but you gotta think of this from a left-wing perspective. This demagogue, this man who literally started his campaign by calling like an entire nation to the south rapists and killers. Just frankly, like if you care about American authority globally, like Trump's ruined that. Like
he's getting on famously with China. He was applauded in Vietnam. America's hated more within America than outside, more the Western world, Europe and America. He's very unpopular.
Pretty.
Like, if you look at him outside of the West, he's actually pretty popular.
He's popular with dictators. He'll shake hands with Robert Duterte, who is a man who literally admires Hitler and has killed thousands of his own citizens. He'll do that.
When Obama didn't. Obama didn't bow down to the Saudi kings.
That's classic whataboutism. I'm not defending Obama. I'm saying that Trump...
But you're isolating Trump as this kind of evil guy. When
we're not talking about Obama. We're talking about Trump.
But that's what I'm saying. You've got to be consistent, James.
Yeah.
If you're going to say, okay, well, we shouldn't respect this guy because he's a bastard. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about Obama's drone strike policy, shall we? How about we talk about keeping on the war for another 5-6 years in Afghanistan, shall we?
This isn't about my hypocrisy or whatever. This is about the fact that this man is bad. And like when you shift the conversation to let's talk about Obama, this is all Fox News does now at this point. It's just,
no, James,
like,
because you're being inconsistent. You're saying, okay, we shouldn't respect this guy because he's a bad guy. You say Obama was a bad guy too, but you know what? It's not about Obama.
Because he's not president now.
Okay, but when he was president, where were you guys? Where was he being criticised for his drone campaigns?
He was criticised constantly.
By the right, mostly.
From the left as well.
Didn't see much on CNN about it, so a lot on Fox News about it.
Whatever. It's like, dude, you're looking at the personalities involved. And fine, you can call that hypocrisy, but the fact is, this isn't about hypocrisy. This is about Trump. This is about right now, the man shook hands with the man who admires Hitler. Like, can we agree that was bad?
Yes, of course we can agree that was bad. But there's certain things called international relations, you know? I'm sure Obama didn't love bowing down to the King of Saudi Arabia. But he did it because it was in America's interests.
Yeah, no,
Trump... How much shit did Trump say about China throughout the campaign trail?
Yeah, no...
Do you not think Jinping... I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, Xi Jinping, yeah.
He... Of course he heard about that. He saw that, but he was happy to go meet Trump, shake his hand. And this is a guy who loves Mao. Mao killed over 100 million people. You're going to support that? I mean, come on. You can't be so, like... Yes, moralistic about it. Sometimes you have to be practical in your application. And I think Trump has gone over to China, shook hands, had a great meeting with him. And I think that was actually very good for both America and China.
Well, one perception of that, just to point that out, is that Xi Jinping is just fucking playing him like a fiddle because he's
the guy is fiercely intelligent
because he's a fucking moron, and Xi Jinping has spotted a mark like from a mile off and said, all I have to do is take this guy to a gold room and show him how fucking cool China is, and he'll cut all that garbage about China being bad. Like, he's the easiest fucking play in the game.
Well,
so like
the thing is, China needs America.
Yeah, for now, like they would rather butter up Trump and be nice to him. This is not Trump's diplomacy skills. This is just, they walked up to him and said, we see an idiot who he can play. That's better than pissing off this angry man who will otherwise just completely go bad at us. Like,
that's a good point.
But, so bringing up, in terms of like China, he's friends with China. People are friends with him because they can play him. You're
forgetting that he's also the president of the US and he's got a lot of power.
Which is why it's very good to play him. Why it's very good if you can get him on your side, and he's very easy to get on side because he will listen to the last person in the room, and that's all that it takes to sway his opinion. Then it's very good to be on his side. And dictators, especially like big personalities like Putin and Duterte, they can do that. Actual politicians who got into their positions through intelligence and having to be democratic and having to actually discuss things with other people, those people don't like Trump. So
isn't it childish the way they've behaved? Because rather than saying, okay, well, this is still the US, this is still a massive ally or trading partner, we need to be on good terms with the head of state. Bashing him on the media from your own home country is not a diplomatic or mature response. I don't know. I just think ultimately there is an international system. There are big players on the board. And what's actually struck me about this is that the foreign policy hasn't changed. It's almost like the presidents... kind of like I know the figureheads anyway, but but it's kind of like, okay, so Trump's still on the campaign trail. Let's be friends with Russia. Russia's, I like Putin. He's a nice guy. Look at them now. Won't talk to each other. It's the same thing. His advisor sat him down and said, "Look, mate, I know you said all these nice things about Putin, but Russia isn't our ally.
Yeah,
China is. Yeah, So the interests of America hasn't changed.
Well, again,
Trump's in the front seat.
Again, I put that down to Trump's incompetence more than anything. If he truly was the great deal maker that he sold himself as, he could be cutting deals in Congress and like moving pieces around. I think he's just watching Fox News half the day. I really don't think he's actually paying much attention to all those things he says that he was gonna do. And that, thankfully, he's incompetent rather than malicious.
Shit's hit the fan for him because he's used to running a company where he could dictate to people what to do. Okay, he now can't do that. And he now has to negotiate and be civil. And the problem is people who are used to unlimited power, once their power is limited, ironically, in this case, they struggle with it. Have you heard about these financial advisors were doing an article about Trump, and they said, if he took the money his father gave him as inheritance and put it in a bank account, he'd have more money than he had now.
This is my point. This is my point of him not being as, for all his spouting off about, I'm a great businessman. Like, his daughter has literally admitted at several points in his life he has literally looked at a homeless man on the street and said, that guy has more money than me because I'm millions in debt. Like, that is a regular occurrence for Trump, which is not good business. Like, for all the people who say, oh, he just diversifies his businesses, he'll take risks, he does all this stuff because he'll make Trump steaks because he just wanted to try out steaks. No, he's just bad at business. He'll scam people with Trump University. He'll try to make Trump vodka.
That's a bit harsh. I think Trump University was a shit show.
Yeah.
I do think it's a bit harsh to say he's just bad at business. I mean, he's very successful in the media business. I
think that's just a play because he's a narcissist and people like to look at narcissists. Like that's the.
But the thing is, Trump is a master brander. Make America great.
Master baiter.
Right, but he's that's a good one. Yeah. But he is a master brander, and that's what he's good at. That's why it's so much easier for him to win an election than it is to run the country.
Yeah,
but you could say that about a lot of presidents or all the presidents, but I think this especially applied in his case. But I think we've slightly gone off topic here.
We've careened off into a Trump special. But bringing it back to the point about authority. I mean, all of those points, further adds flame to my point about it. This man is not deserving of respect from all of from the structural position of just because he won an election on less than 50% of the vote in a frankly fucked up system that doesn't work properly. He's gotten into this position. He's done nothing in the last year. You've said him yourself. He's basically a figurehead. To flip him off is basically the least you can do.
No, because to apply his social incompetence to the rest of society again, point I made earlier. it makes an ass out of everyone. And I think you're actually putting yourself down to his level, you know. And you know what? The whole thing about the electoral college, Bush won over Al Gore, you know, and people did say this for a little while.
Again, because of the electoral college,
because of the electoral college, but people didn't really question Bush's legitimacy in the same way they are doing Trump's. I mean, it was talked about, of course, and it was a big thing, but because Trump is the way he is, people kind of think it's okay to then have the whole office of the presidency and the whole federal system and the whole kind of nationhood of America to then say, okay, well, I don't care about this anymore, is giving up on society because of one idiot. And that's not the way we should approach this.
The key thing is, though, I mean, even if it isn't flipping someone off, we can't treat Trump as the norm, is because he is so aberrant and just like he's so flippant that he will just say completely reprehensible things on stage, like calling another national leader Rocket Man, like at the UN, a man who's literally potentially capable of nuking other countries, like putting essentially South Korea in the firing line there. He is so aberrant that you can't treat him normally, and if that means just like daily reports, like Keith Olbermann does the show on GQ called The Resistance, where it's literally every day he'll do another 5-minute episode about whatever Trump's done, and he's got enough material for that, so that's kind of scary. But like, there has to be some kind of ongoing. We have to remember this isn't normal, and we flipping them off. Like I said, it happens with every president, and the fact that this was pictured, I really don't think it's that big a deal. Like
I think again, I think we disagree on this. If it was my company and someone said "fuck Obama" in a sign, and it was the picture of my employee on the news, he'd be out the door. I'm sorry, there's a way to civilly protest, and that's not the way to do it. Same with Trump, same with Obama. You're saying to me, I'm changing this because of the personalities. That is what you are doing. Because it's Trump, you're saying it's fine to disrespect the head of state. I just still think he's still the head of state, and you've got to have some not respect for authority, but respect for your nation. If he represents your nation. I know that's hard to say because of the way he's been, but this has to apply. Otherwise, the whole system will just collapse.
Well, I mean, in
the social system,
I don't know. I feel like I'm a bit outside of it because we're not in America, but I've talked to Americans, over there, and just like the level with which their government system is fucked is frankly getting to the point of it needs like fundamental overhaul for it to be functional. The Congress isn't getting anything done. The president isn't getting anything done. And like the stuff that is getting done is awful, and no one actually wants it because they can filibuster and like stuff is structurally built in there to either favour the status quo or just let like massive things just pile up in the background.
It's degenerating, is what you're saying.
I would more look at it as like gears cracking in a clock, just like...
Well, do you know who else said that?
Who?
I'm not doing Goldman's law here, but do you know who else said that?
Alright.
Julius Caesar. Augustus Caesar, and yes, Hitler, but give me a break with all that stuff.
Sure.
Caesar said exactly the same thing. He said, look, this isn't working. Congress, you're corrupt. No one's passing any laws. The average Roman is starving on the streets. It's lawlessness. Agriculture's failing. We're getting invaded by barbarian hordes.
Yeah.
All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a dictator, okay? And I'm going to fix things, and I'm going to put bread out on the streets, and then obviously you're stabbed 26 times. But once Augustus Caesar, his nephew, came in, as I said in the last episode, he brought order to Rome, and he said, okay, well, the democracy doesn't work. You're saying the same thing as they were saying, and that is what happens when you stop believing in your nation. Dictators arise.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you can't just ignore it and say everything's fine. The nation's still great. Don't worry. That fire you see in the distance is not actually there. It's like at some point
do we want autocracy though?
No. Like this is where a lot of you'd call it this exaggerating, but a lot of people on the left were saying when Trump was elected that this was basically a Julius Caesar style moment because all he did was attack the government. All he did was say how shit America was. Like if you want to defend the idea of we shouldn't be just insulting the government, that was entirely Trump's shtick.
I think it's okay to insult the government and critique the government. People like Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, they are my heroes. Yeah. Okay, but they had legitimate concerns, legitimate data, legitimate theories, and they release it to the world. Exposing corruption is different to flipping someone off.
Well, here's a flashback to 2016. You remember when Trump, doxed a guy on stage? Like, he literally just put up a guy's public phone number because he didn't like him? and like told people to call him and insult him basically.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, isn't that like it's something that if you should be fired from your fucking low level government job, for flipping the president off in traffic, should you also not be disqualified from the presidency for literally doxing a guy on stage? You know.
Yeah,
like,
well, I don't support that. Yeah.
No, I know, but like this is a man who clearly is like at that level where he would not play by the rules if he were to say the arguments of no, you can't disrespect me. That's like we can't lower the civil conversation here. You know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think more should have been done about that. I don't think going to his level again is the answer.
Right.
I think we need to be better because we need to say we're a good nation, or say if we're American.
Yeah.
You need to say America's great, and you got to believe in America and actually be that greatness.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the time America is, but I think for citizens to keep that greatness despite having a head of state who's potentially a complete idiot, they have to keep that civility and keep that maturity. And I think once you bow down to that level, that's when shit hits the fan.
Yeah, it's troubling because the thing is, like I said, those problems that I mentioned of just like Congress not working and the presidency not working, it's not as bad here, but there's elements of it where stuff is just grinding and stuff is like the structure of the government does not meet the needs of the people, and you would, this is something you've even pointed out, of the state being this old idea, or at least like the states that we have having been constructed earlier on and just having stuff bolted on over time, they're not quite fit for purpose in the modern age, especially with technology the way it's going. So like it does need fundamental reform, like to the point of it needs like everything about it to be like at least modified. And yeah, when you get to that stage of the government is not working, doing its job, it's not doing things to where it needs, like the fundamentals of getting roads built and making sure government employees get paid, when the government can't even do that right, yeah, you need massive change, and it's not worthy of respect. The problem is, yeah, a lot of the time when it gets to that stage, you can't deal with it diplomatically, and yeah, it ends up being dictators usually get in, which is the shitty situation of that.
The path to hell is paved with good intentions. So America is broken because of corporate influence on government. It doesn't have a sense of unity within the Congress. Things aren't being done properly. As I said, there's mass corruption, huge debt. The debt is a big issue.
It's not.
It is a big issue. Because half the debt is owed to its own Federal Reserve. That's a fucking issue. When half your nation's debt is owed to a few criminals at the top. That's when you know the system's fucked.
We'll get onto that in another episode.
But radical change will only lead to a lot of bloodshed and balkanization and genocide. That is generally what we've seen throughout the patterns of history. I mean, so where do we go from here? Yeah,
this is the big question of it, because like it's a weird conversation we've ended up having, going from should you be able to flip off the president to seize the means of production.
But that's where all little things in politics have a really deep root. That's why politics are so interesting, because everything is interconnected on such a grand scale. Yeah, like I said, it's something that is going to need to be looked at, because you got to think in politics in terms of decades and centuries, and like if we keep letting the government be just like this non-functioning thing, and people like Trump getting in at the presidential levels, and it keeps being terrible, and it keeps not doing its job, and gets worse and worse, eventually stuff's gonna happen, right? Like that, I'm just looking at that from a study perspective. Like I'm just identifying practical.
I'm just looking at it like that's what's gonna happen, right?
So you think there will be an age of dictators next?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I would almost say that with blockchain technology, we could almost start seeing some anarcho-communism almost, to the point where the state becomes unnecessary in a lot of fields.
My favourite topic, if historical materialism runs true, then it would, but that's something we're yet to see.
Well, I mean, that's again a debate for another day. But in terms of just what's going to happen next, it's hard to say.
It might be quite a sad thing. It might be in 2400, people go, okay, it was about the 17th century to roughly the 21st was the era of democracy in the West. Then afterwards, things changed.
Well, especially like in terms of your idea that China is the next superpower, which I think, again, just looking from a study perspective of just looking at it from the outside, I think that's just going to happen. But I see these wheels in motion where they will just become the superpower that dictates the flow of world commerce, and in that sense, they will definitely be promoting. I don't know if they'd be promoting dictatorship, but they won't be helping democracy out in any the way they are.
It's quite funny actually, because China, they replace all their top politicians. Is it every 2 years? I'm going to be corrected by some of the comments, but they replace the whole freaking chamber quite regularly. And if you're caught embezzling money, it's execution. So it's kind of like, it's almost like you hate to say it, but it's almost like a functioning dictatorship almost.
Kind of
in some ways, but I think China is propped up by the dominance of the international system, which is protected with free trade. Like, for example, America protects all the oceans, so free trade can run smoothly without pirates or other states getting involved. So China does benefit again from America's dominance. It's not so simple, but yes, I think China looks like it's going to be the next big one. Yeah,
quite possibly. And just to get my last thinger in, they certainly won't be allowing people to flip off their elected officials. So.
But that's different. I'm not saying it should be
I
illegal.
win.
You don't win.
See,
I'm not saying it should be illegal. I'm just saying it's not civil.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Cool. Yeah. Well, we'll see you next time on JP.
See you next time, guys.